Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Share Screen Africa event. Our first talk, The Blind Spots of Sustainable Safaris, invites us to look critically at the assumptions and practices within ecotourism.
Thank you so much, Christine, and good evening once again, everyone. Our first key learning outcome is understand how safari traditions and guiding philosophies influence sustainability. Identify practical approaches such as walking safari and mobile camps that enhance responsible tourism. Recognize gaps in safari operations and how to address them through community and organizational collaboration. And as we begin, I would like to take a moment to firstly acknowledge Dorobo Safari. I've had opportunity to experience their work firsthand. And what really stood out to me was the authenticity of their hospitality, the way their mobile camps are set up really nice and comfortable, and the deep respect they have for wildlife and how intentionally they work with communities. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Oli to lead us into the session. Oli, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Josh and I are here tonight to get involved with conversations about sustainable tourism. In our case, it's sustainable safaris. Thanks, Diane, for the introduction. I just want to say I'm a fairly recent member of the Dorobo crew, Dorobo family, and Josh is, as Diane said, a member of the family that founded the Dorobo Safaris. So I'm here to communicate as best as I can what Dorobo has been doing for 43 years. And also from the start, I want to say in terms of sustainability, we constantly question ourselves in terms of our practices and our philosophies. So we don't pretend tonight that we have all the answers, but we want to share some of what we do and reflect with the people that are here tonight. And so we have a presentation that takes a form of a quiz that you'll get to participate in. And if you have questions, and please do, or some suggestions, take the time to note them or even write them in the chat. And at the end of the presentation, which would last about 20-ish minutes, we'll have a time for Q&A, questions and answers. So we'll try to keep the flow with so many people in this Zoom call. But yeah, we'll have a more interactive session at the end of the presentation. We call this presentation The Blind Spots of Sustainable Safaris. And that's for us too, to remind ourselves that sometimes we get caught into our own operations, our own projects, and then sometimes we tend to forget about the novelty of research or whatever. So the blind spots we found was an appropriate title just as a reminder for us all. I just want to invite Josh maybe if he wants to introduce himself as well before we start this poll. Thanks for the word here.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, everybody. Good evening if you're in Africa. So my name is Joshua Peterson. I'm one of the directors of Dorobo Safaris, and working together with Oli right now. Don't know, Oli, should we just get into it? Should we start with a bit of a background?
Yeah, so the way it's gonna go is that Josh and I will share the questions. I'll start with the first question, then Josh will go, and then but we'll co-present in that way. And so the first question came from, you can show it maybe, Maret. The first question came from an interaction we had recently with a professor so Dorobo has been hosting trips for universities for the last 25, 30 years. And so there's a university interested in coming for a sustainable tourism and business analytics course. And in a conversation, she said that she heard that hot air balloon safaris may be the most sustainable way of doing safaris, and that triggered the question, so what is the most sustainable way of doing safaris? And we wanted to start with this. Um, so you can take maybe a few seconds to engage and write the answer that you feel is the best answer, if there is. Yeah, it's fairly so sometimes it takes time to like to answer just like what do we mean. I think one question that Josh and I have when we speak about this is what do we actually mean by most sustainable? And for us right now, if we had to give an answer, it would be walking safaris in mobile camps. So walking safaris, which would be different than hot air balloon or just doing game drives. And also there's a mobile camps component that sorry, I saw the thumb up. Took my attention off. So yeah, the mobile camps is as opposed to for example permanent constructions in the bush. So we always question ourselves like what's the really the best way for us right now. That's the answer, and that's been the answer for Dorobo for some time. And we'll see in the next questions maybe why we believe right now it's one of at least one of the most sustainable ways of doing safaris. So we could go to, yeah, I think some people
I'll
have,
just add to that. I'll
yeah,
just add to that, Oli, that there's many different ways of doing safaris, and there's many ways of making it sustainable. So again, we're not saying our way is the only way or necessarily the best way, but in general, so for Dorobo Safaris, to give you a background, we focus very much on mobile camping and walking safaris as a very big part, important part of what we do. And it's been that way for the last 42 years. And of course, we believe it is one of the most sustainable, and we'll discuss what that means as we come up, ways of doing safaris. Of course, not everyone can do, or not everyone wants to do. And so even the other ways of doing safaris, there are ways of making them more sustainable. So we're just going to go through very much kind of what we do and how we think it's sustainable and how we try to make it sustainable and by what we mean. So again, this question also again comes down to the definition of what, people believe sustainable means. For us, we're talking about, we believe it's what will bring the most benefit in the long term. You can see what people think as it comes in, but for us, to be very honest with you, all of these are a part of what sustainability or what sustainable tourism or sustainable safaris is. Um, Again, each one has its, pros and cons, and it's also how you look at it. So for us, for areas to exist naturally is very important. What does that mean? Not only from an ecological point of view, but also for us, it means allowing traditional livelihoods and people that live in these areas, who have been shaping these ecosystems, especially in East Africa for millennia, for them to be able to also continue to function and adapt in those areas. More national parks, again, from an ecological point of view, having large ecologically intact areas is important for wildlife. But of course, that also comes with uh, challenges from wildlife-human conflicts that increase, negative views of conservation from losing land to traditional livelihoods. So, we consider all these things. Definitely, we believe that doing walking safaris and mobile camps gets travelers to be more engaged and to learn more about ecology and the areas they are in for various reasons, which we'll also talk about more coming up. So, and then, reducing carbon emissions, that's definitely one aspect of sustainability if you look at it from the impact on the global ecosystem and environment. So I think you can see, as per the polls, a lot of people agree with that.
If I may add, just to push on what Josh has been saying, I think the words that we can include, this question serves to present the idea that when we talk about sustainability, I think we talk about complexity. It's a complex thing, meaning it's not really good or bad, right or wrong. It's more. There's a huge spectrum of uh, initiatives that we can incorporate, but also I think we recognize it has to be holistic. So there's not one angle to tackle when we talk about sustainability. There's multiple, and that's what makes it also complex. And that's what makes it sometimes confusing. And that's what invites us to keep questioning what that means. Because what it meant in 1982 is different than what it is in 2025 because of the different changes that we're going through. I think we can go to the next. So this question, mobile camps, as opposed to permanent lodges or seasonal camps, allow wildlife to keep using the areas and allows the ecosystem to regenerate quickly. So is that true or false? Yeah, the true is climbing up fast. Well, yeah, I think we definitely think it in a certain way. We do not. We do know though that there are sustainable ways of running seasonal camps or permanent lodges. Just like Josh said, it's not because we do something that the other initiatives or projects are invalid. But for us, mobile camps, and Josh, please add on whenever you want, but what it means is that, and today we had a meeting with the employees of Dorobo, with the directors and also the founders. So the three brothers who started this. So one of them is Josh's dad. And what one of the founders said is that what they liked when they were going on safari back in the 80s and 90s, one said, we love the fact that we get to a place and no one has been there for 6 months. And it just made me think, like, yeah, that's quite it tells about the area that you're exploring, that there's not as much human activity, and by that we mean, maybe tourism or agriculture practices or hunter-gatherers, whatever. It's just the idea that those areas are less impacted by human settlement, which we know impacts at some point. Now, again, there are different practices. It's not because agriculture is bad. It's not because hunting and gathering is bad or tourism is bad. That's not the point, because, as we know, it's complex. But in terms of tourism, I think we do enjoy the idea that there's those places where we can go and see more wildlife or local communities living there than mass tourism. I think that's one concept that we can bring up in this question. Josh, I don't know
Yeah.
if you want to add or adjust or correct something that I said.
Yeah, no, to add to that, it's about definitely, there's no doubt that, having a mobile camp which comes in with guests and moves out with the same group, definitely has a lower impact in terms of allowing an area to recover. You don't have any of the issues that come with permanent lodges in terms of waste management, water use, and other things that we'll talk about, from an ecological point of view. But to go beyond that, again, it also, if you're talking about cultural tourism or, working with different kind of local communities, it also has the same benefit. To give an example, we have a long running, I think it must be going about 30 years now, program with a group of hunter-gatherers here in Tanzania, the Hadzabe. And again, it's a larger area. We have multiple campsites. Each group comes in with a mobile camp and departs with a mobile camp. And there's certain stipulations that were set very long time ago. For example, the mobile camp is set up away from where the Hadza actually have their encampments. And all of this is to basically minimize the impact that a tourist group has on the area as well as on the culture. So basically, are having a lower impact on their everyday lives. They live their life, and we're coming in literally to visit as guests instead of being a permanent fixture there that then has much more of a larger impact. So definitely, from the very beginning, the idea of being mobile, and actually, in fact, the whole mobile camps and philosophy of our company were based off of a hunter-gatherer kind of lifestyle because my dad and my uncles, the founders, actually had a good relationship with a hunter-gatherer in those years. So a lot of the philosophies are actually based off of this hunter-gatherer philosophies of kind of being mobile, being sustainable, and moving out of areas, having nothing permanent in fixtures. So definitely something that we have developed and we've been doing it for 43 years. So definitely we've been able to see the impacts, and it's amazing. There's areas that are very seasonal. So 6 months out of the year, we can't use them. And some Kungunero since 75 they've been visiting, so that's almost 50 years now. You can go there and it doesn't look like anyone's ever been there, apart from a fireplace. So that's pretty amazing, and something pretty special, we feel, as well.
Yeah, and there's a conversation also we had today about different areas have different realities. And I think we do recognize that in certain areas, depending on the endemic reality that they're living, depending on the villages that are around, or if it's a national park versus a wildlife management area, we recognize that different realities bring different ideal practices. So again, it's to remember that, yeah, so this is an example where we feel it's more appropriate to have mobile camps and walk in those areas to protect the environment and the cultures that are there. However, maybe in national parks, it's a different answer, and we do recognize this. It's just that I saw a question or a comment there asking about our considerations. So yeah, maybe we can move on to the next slide.
So walking safaris generate sustainability action from tourists, guides, rangers, local people, because again, from our experience, from the very, very beginning, walking has always been an integral part of what we do, the safaris that we run. Basically, we feel, being able to walk in the environment where, if you believe in evolution and some of the stuff that's been found with the ancestors, for all intents and purposes, we probably learned to walk in this environment, or at least something similar. And so to be able to walk in an environment, it just feels good and feels right. And to be honest with you, there is no better way, I feel, of generating sustainability action from doing safaris than doing a walking safari. Walking, gets people involved with basically involves all the senses. So basically, you're engaging more of the senses. This is the guests, the guides, the rangers. This means more stimulus, imprinting on the brain from more input. And basically, situations and experiences on a walking safari have much more significance and meaning, in the body and the mind over time. So basic experiences will stay longer and influence, I believe, individuals much more. So, I think as a lot of people looks like they agree in the poll, all of the above. Basically, to be able to run a walking safari, our guides have to have a much more comprehensive ecological, ethological, general knowledge. And this gets passed on to the guests. Higher education required for guides, exact same thing. Game viewing on foot tends to humble people, definitely. You really, like I said, you become much more in tune with the environment. A small situation with an elephant all of a sudden has a totally different meaning compared to when you're in a vehicle. And through that, I think tourists develop respect and consideration for the areas. They do stay longer. They have more of a connection, basically, with it. And I believe these connections that they get and the things they think about and talk about around the fire after doing a mobile and walking safari tend to stay longer with them even when they leave the safari. So even when they go home. And I think it's obviously doing walking safaris already attracts a certain type of client, but it can also have a bigger impact afterwards when guests leave. So, yeah.
Always said.
Yeah. You want to add anything, Oli? Are you good?
No, I think that was comprehensive enough. Nice job. Okay, the more you increase safari fees, the more safaris become exclusive, and as a result, you reduce the impact on the ecosystems. So is this true or false in your opinion? Before we see all the results, I think we can expect almost 50-50 here. Okay, there seems to be a tendency to agree that higher fees will reduce the amount of people, which could reduce the impact. But yeah, no, we're really wondering. So, and this is something that's as a company we have a certain control on, but not the whole control on safari fees. For example, we don't necessarily decide we don't decide the fees for the national parks. That's just an example like this. Yeah, we're almost at 50-50 now. It's a non-consensual question that many people ask. Yeah, and I think one thing I want to add about this, one thing we see, one thing I see on the mountains, for example, on the conversations I've had with potential travelers, and they want to climb Kili, for example, and they see rates of different company, and they have a hard time choosing, and then they go like, okay, well, then I'll go for the one that costs X amount of money, which is very different than the other one. Well, there's a blind spot there in the sense that the travelers don't know how much it's supposed to cost, because rarely, if ever, do you have a company that says these are the costs for everything that you pay for. It doesn't happen really. And so a conversation we have with certain people sometimes is just maybe it's affordable. It doesn't mean it's the best option to preserve an area or to pay well the people that take part in the experience. Sometimes it can be an issue, the salary that guides or porters will get, or rangers or driver guides, or so it's a question that's hard to answer because there are so many components. But um, yeah, as a company, I think we're trying to, we do push to support our people as best as we can. I guess any company can say this, but yeah, it's a question we ask ourselves: how much do we pay our people this kind of job? What's the salary scale, for example, or in this area, is this a reasonable fee, to make our clients pay this, or is it enough? So it's a very floating, always constant question. At the end of the day, it involves sales, so money is part of it, and yeah, we do our best with all that's at stake, including things that we don't control. Jay, I don't know if you want to add to this, or maybe.
Yeah. I think as we've always said in the beginning, there's multiple ways and models of doing things, of doing tourism. This is a question in a form that from the very beginning, when my dad and uncle started Dorobo, it was in the very beginning of tourism in Tanzania in the 80s. And they were some of the first to push for kind of community community agreements and using kind of community areas for tourism. And they came up, there was disagreements or let's say discussions with certain other individuals within the business and within conservation in general about how to do things. So, for us, looking at different models, for example, there's, high use, low use, high value model. There's high use, high use, high volume, low value. And so for us, in many of the areas that we've worked with communities, we have actually pushed for an exclusive use of these tourism areas where we have agreements. And the idea being that we can actually kind of control a little bit better the experience in those areas. Whether this means for cultural tourism, which our parents in the very beginning were very hesitant to get into, because cultural tourism can be a very can very quickly go wrong, can very quickly have many negative outcomes from, even if it's a positive intention. But they did do it with the Hadzabe, the long-standing tourism program, which very carefully set up. But basically, the idea is to have fewer tourists coming in with mobile camps, so less impact, but each tourist basically paying more. So trying to generate equivalent or high revenues as best as possible, but with a lower impact. In order for guests to be able to pay kind of higher fees to go into these areas, many of which are equivalent to national parks or more, you have to have an experience or a product that the guests are willing to pay for. And so for, over the 43 years of doing these safaris, basically what we've found for us, again, not saying it's the only way, and also like Oli said, many areas, different areas will have different models that work good in those areas. But we've found that being able to basically have exclusivity, which is basically being able to manage the tourism in that area, allows us to basically be able to maintain the high level of the experience, high level of professionalism, and minimize a lot of the negative consequences that might come from tourism, because we're also not naive enough to believe that tourism is a silver bullet. It comes with a lot of potential negative impacts. And so being able to kind of try and manage that as best as possible to make sure the benefits outweigh any kind of potential negative. So that's what that's kind of where our business and Dorobo has gone, and that's where we have found for us works the best with our kind of mobile camps, and again focusing on the experience if it's with cultures, if it's a really good, very special walking experience, which also can't be done in a very high use zone because you do have potential dangerous sides to that. So that's kind of where we've set ourselves within this question of exclusivity, higher fees. We understand, exclusive has its negative sides for a lot, not everyone can afford or access then that. But it is kind of what we've found to be the most benefit for what we offer, basically.
Yeah, we can go to the next slide. I think also we're time is going by, so if should we conclude, Maret? Maybe you're or no, we're good.
No, you can continue. I just just a
Okay.
tiny warning, but yeah, you can continue.
All right. Well, yeah. Josh, are you doing the next one or?
Yep. So again, I think Water use, this is kind of an example to showcase kind of one of the impacts, potential impacts of mobile camps versus seasonal camps. And basically, one of the big issues that does come up as an example is water use. For Dorobo, for our camps, we bring in drinking water with us for each group. It gets carried in from our headquarters in Arusha, which is used for basically everything from drinking to cooking and bathing and all that. Once you have an established camp, you need to start getting water from somewhere nearby, usually. And this can have significant impacts on the surrounding communities. Just as an example to consider, you have over 1 million tourists probably visiting Ngorongoro Crater in Tanzania every year, all using water pumped from boreholes on the crater rim. Almost all the tourist vehicles that they're traveling get washed at least once during their visit. You're talking about all the cooking, laundry, staff, and so definitely that has an impact. And again, this is just one example. We're not talking about other things such as waste disposal, and yeah, of course, many other things. Of course, we understand water has to come from somewhere. So, are we having an impact where we're drawing it from at our base? Perhaps, but at least, the idea is we can actually then have a central point where we're managing it. And again, you're talking about less impact in the areas that we're working. So this was kind of, again, some of the things that guests especially will not think about on a safari when they're doing a safari, as an example.
Thanks, Jay. We can go to the next. Which partnerships are essential to run walking safaris and mobile camps? So we have here local communities, local governments, sorry, such as districts, villages, tribes, governmental institutions like TANAPA, which is Tanzania National Park, or TAWA, Wildlife Authority, Tanzanian Wildlife Authority, Tanzania Forest Service, all these. So it is essential for example, in national parks for walking safaris, we have to be with a ranger, but also we want to be with a ranger because it can improve the experience. There are some rangers that are really fabulous. Also in other areas that we just as a part of a Dorobo tradition, we walk with local peoples, may it be Maasai or the Hadzabe or people that come from the area that we're exploring. But really here, the culture of walking safaris is different than other countries. I think there's a more developed walking safari culture in other countries than here in Tanzania. So definitely it's a particular type of safari, and that does require that we collaborate with different entities. Jay, do you want to add to this? Yeah, I think everyone agrees that all the above collaborations and partnerships are just essential in general for when we talk about walking, but when we talk about sustainability, that's for sure.
Definitely. I think it's obviously, again, it's a much more involved activity that takes, and we find that is important. And then I would say, the local communities for us has always been one of the keys, because using the local knowledge, the people on the ground, the people that live in those areas, even me personally growing up here, the way my uncle and my dad's did safaris, was very, very, very much. They learned almost everything from the local people, the local communities, the Maasai they worked with, the Hadzabe. And, it's why we love even doing these safaris, because every time you're learning something new, it's always an exchange and a two-way thing. So yeah, and all the rest, of course, it is important. It's all everything that comes together to be able to walk in the areas that we walk in.
We can go to the next.
Tourism can help improve issues regarding human-wildlife conflicts. Um, so definitely, in Tanzania as a case study, but all over, protected areas with wildlife and a growing human population have led to increased human-wildlife interaction and conflict. That is definitely, um, something you can't argue against, I think. I would say, in that tourism has a direct and indirect impact by supporting and promoting many of these protected areas. So, in a way, again, you can see already in the comments, it's very context dependent and how you look at it. Though in a way, definitely tourism in some ways has actually maybe caused more issues regarding human wildlife conflicts by, by protecting and promoting um, protected areas. Um, I would argue that, and I think there are studies that also have shown that the perception of wildlife by local communities um, is very important and often dictates how the communities um, respond to human wildlife conflict. So I would say that, if looking at this as a whole, the way we do walking safaris and mobile camps, in many community areas, many of which are surrounding protected areas where there is a lot of human wildlife conflict, um, raises awareness, one with regarding basically importance of wildlife, generates revenue, and supports livelihoods for local communities, which can help individuals to better respond to kind of conflicts, um, maybe with less bitterness and resentment. It basically allows communities to see wildlife as part of their lives and livelihoods instead of just a nuisance that belongs to the government and brings no benefit to them. So there's a way they can actually link wildlife with their own livelihoods instead of just seeing it as an outside owned by outsiders and causing them harm. So yeah, I do believe that tourism can play a role in improving issues regarding human wildlife conflicts. At the same time, understanding that it is you know partly liable for promote promoting the environment that can cause these human wildlife conflicts as well.
In a very fast growing industry, what challenges can we face as walking safari operators? There's quite a few. So just like reduction of a certain species of animal or vegetation, um, sorry, loss of habitat or loss of areas will impact. So that can take many forms, but that's definitely one that can impact walking safari operators. So we're talking about walking areas that are defined as walking areas that now have construction or that now allow cars to pass. So the thing with walking safaris is that I think Josh mentioned a bit of this earlier. Too much presence may not allow then too much human presence or of as tourists. I mean, may not allow a safe walking safari in the end, because a big part of like a big consideration for walking safaris is the safety of the people doing it. So, and we try to control the ourselves in the environment as much as we can. And if there's interferences, then that can impact the safety. That's just one example. I'm just mindful of the time. Should we, Josh, do you have anything to add about this question here, or we go to the, yeah.
I think we're good. Yeah, it's yeah. Yeah. So, again, coming back to initial, again, sorry, I was just reading also through the comments, and again, these are the types of discussions that we like to have with our guests around campfires, after a day of walking and wildlife viewing and spending time with the local communities. And there's a lot of points brought up in the discussion, very valid in terms of, the impact also of mobile camping safaris. And so we're also not saying that the mobile camping safaris are the best or only way. But we do feel, and again, any type of safari, any type of tourism that is done, there are better and worse ways of doing it. There are more sustainable and less sustainable ways of doing it. When we're looking at talking about sustainable for us, we're thinking about long term. Will have the most benefit for the long term. And it's also how we started doing safaris, and basically, um, the idea is that it's a fast-paced industry, things are changing. We're not going to be perfect, but at least these are some of the questions and things that are in the back of our mind as we're trying to make decisions as we go forward. Basically, just to quickly, and this is something, but Dorobo Safaris, our vision for the next 3 to 5 years, is trying to encapsulate some of what we've been talking about, and how do we put it in. But basically, understanding that our business is tourism, running safaris, basically to continue to curate a portfolio of exclusive, immersive educational experiences. These are things that we feel are important in a safari, particularly immersive, educational. There's a lot more that goes behind this. But basically, the way we want to do this, you can go to the next slide. All right. Investing energy and resources in Dorobo's infrastructure. This is basically the base of, we need infrastructure, we need vehicles, we need the camps. And in doing that, investing our energy resources, again, as we're doing that, we're also conscious about the sustainability of it. What's the best equipment to buy, where to buy it, vehicles, all that kind of stuff. Next. All right. Supporting basically our staff professional development. This is kind of the cornerstone of Dorobo, is our staff. The people, the teams that work with, we understand that without them, there is no Dorobo Safaris. So, making sure we're investing in them is kind of one of the key components we've identified over the next couple of years to continue investing. We have been doing that, and that's a place that it's basically a foundation of Dorobo. Contributing to the protection of wilderness areas. This includes community areas. But basically, again, without the areas that we use to have our special experiences that we do provide, we wouldn't be able to provide the experiences. So this is a understanding that the areas and putting resources and energy into the areas, also being open to finding new areas and new ways of doing things, new collaborations. We feel this is one of the important areas to invest in the next few years. And developing partnerships with local organizations and communities. Tourism is a booming, huge industry at the moment. We're not the only ones doing things, and as Oli and as the title of this talk explains, there are blind spots. We're aware that we're not even aware of some of our blind spots. So, one of the ways we see is to be able to work with other organizations, other companies in the industry, that are doing good things, that align with our values, to basically be able to increase our impact and make sure that we're doing things properly. And then, of course, the communities that we do work with are another one of the foundations of what we do and what we offer. Thank you guys all. Asante sana from Tanzania. Yeah, I know there's a lot there. There's a lot of discussions from what we've said. Um, so yeah, that's at least gives you maybe an idea of where we're coming from and how we're facing and thinking about these types of issues.
Yes, asante sana to both Josh and Oli. Thank you so much for a great experience you just shared with us about mobile camping. And like you mentioned, there are different ways you can do safari, and they're all the core needs to be sustainability in it at the end of the day. So I want to thank you so much for a great presentation, and I want to appreciate the audience. The chat has been busy, different interesting comments and feedback and questions. There is one question that was from CB Limidia. I will apologize if I pronounce your name incorrectly. Bear with me. But they asked, how do you deal with elderly guests who cannot walk fast and long distance anymore? Is there a requirement that or a guideline that you to inform people about walking safari sort of things? I think that's what they were referring to.
Yeah, I can jump in just quick, and Josh, you can add on. So we don't just do walking safaris. I think from the first just coming in, we want to express this. So we do mixes that include walking safaris. There are some clients that want to do trekking in areas, and that's it. But we do also use lodges. We do game drives. Some clients are not interested in walking safaris, so we have those options as well. And then in certain areas, yeah, for some people that want to experience this walking, for those people who walking is an issue, then yeah, maybe it's not the best recommendation that we're gonna give them to go to on a walk, but we can do mobile camps. They can still visit those areas and have the mobile camp, and we use the cars, for example, or and the walks can be, you know, the walks will last as long as the clients or the travelers want. So we're not forcing a certain amount of time, and they're not known as very tough hikes. So, and also if something happens, we just come back to camp, or a car comes to pick us up. So those options are all there, just in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll
And
just add to that that we're very flexible, and that's again one of the things we love about mobile camping and walking safaris is you can be flexible. You're not stuck with going to any specific place. You can move camp quite easily, and yeah, so we also can cater to basically um, different people's needs. So obviously, if there's a very big mobility issue, but you know, I've done a safari with actually a bicycle safari with a paraplegic who was basically from the neck down, from the upper neck down, so had use of the hands, but could not use his feet. And he had a hand bike, and his friends had normal bicycles, and we did a whole bicycle safari with our mobile camp, including visiting the Hadza, which meant getting him around Hadza land on his mobile bike. So, you know, we're very flexible and yeah, so we can adapt. And obviously, if you can't, you know, there's certain things if it's physically we can't do, but we try our best. And that's what we love also about having a small operation, having mobile camps, is we can be adaptable.
yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you for always accommodating everyone and for leading the logistics around. So as you understand, it's open for everyone. They just need to work the logistics on how you can have the same experience. And there's also another question from Professor Edimi Eningai, who is they asked about that most of ecotourism activities are mostly in wetlands and boats and can get too expensive nowadays. Are there any ideas to solve this logistics challenge in our region? They're from Nigeria.
You know, unfortunately for me, we don't have much experience in wetlands, and we tend to be in a very much more dry area here in Tanzania and East Africa. So to be honest with you, I don't have enough expertise in that to be able to answer. Yeah.
Mm, okay. There's also another question. Do you set up a mobile camp and then walk out each day? Or are you thinking about trays when you carry your own bag and tent? I think they want to understand the process of how mobile camps are set. Yeah, if you can briefly share. Yes.
Definitely. In the past, we definitely had some donkey assisted treks. So this was through some areas of Masai land to the east of Serengeti National Park and then Ngorongoro Conservation Area. You could do multiple day walks with actually Masai and donkeys carrying your supplies. And we did have a couple treks, multiple day treks in southern Tanzania on the Mzombe River near Ruaha National Park, where up to 7 days, guests carried all their whole camp with you, no vehicle in those 7 days until you got to the end. And that was also during a time when there was no radios, there were no cell phones, and basically you disappeared in the bush for 7 days. Um, but to be honest, as the industry has changed, and as expectations have changed, and kind of the areas and accessibility have changed, now almost all of our mobile camping and walking are vehicle assisted. So generally, for up to 6, 8, even 10 people, depending on how many tents it is, our mobile camp will fit into one Land Cruiser pickup with two camp crew. And it is mobile and small enough that it will, for walking safaris, for example, in the Serengeti, we have multiple day walks. Guests can leave camp in the morning walking. Um, the camp crew will break down camp, pack it up, drive the car around, and guests can walk into the next camp for lunch. And they'll do that we can do that for up to 10 days through the Serengeti, for example. In other areas, it is basically comes in for 3, 4 nights at a time. And then you can do walking from camp. So that's often how we do. So almost always now it is vehicle assisted, but it is something that we are very interested in, and we are looking at more ways and more experiences, more places where we can actually start doing more carrying your own camp and having no vehicles to help, just walking and carrying camp as well. Yes.
Mhm. Thank you, Joshua. We have another interesting question from Jane Luke. Do you mind unmuting your microphone and you ask your question, Jane? Yes.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
I was just wondering if you have seen the effect of people walking affecting wildlife and affecting wildlife behavior in negative ways more than perhaps where they're seen in trucks as being completely harmless. I have seen this effect. Have you also seen it?
Definitely, like we explained to a lot of our guests, wildlife, especially in Africa, evolved with humans, and there is a natural fear of humans. So, we do find, especially in areas where there isn't much tourism, where we do walking, wildlife tends to be more skittish, more scared, tends to run away. Um, there is an argument that actually that is a more natural situation. There is a lot of arguments that actually the habituation that wildlife get to vehicles, because usually it's because there are so many vehicles, there's so much tourism that wildlife does get habituated to the vehicles, so they start seeing it as harmless and non-intrusive. That can also have its negative impacts. You can have, I mean, again, this has raises a lot of, again, discussions. Is it natural? Is it okay if a lion uses a vehicle to hide and then to hunt an animal, which, that would normally have not have been in their natural environment? Is it okay? Is it not okay? We find that wildlife do tend to be more scared of people on foot. There's also the right and proper ways of conducting a walking safari with the idea that you don't want to intrude on wildlife as much as possible. So yeah, it's an interesting question. I think, as we've found a lot of the areas where we do walking safaris, if it's not in the national parks, it is in community areas where wildlife do interact with people already. And it's very interesting because often wildlife will behave differently in areas with Maasai, for example, as other areas. So certain animals actually are not affected. Wildebeest and zebra in the Simanjiro to the east of Tarangire National Park, which see Maasai coming around them all the time, actually don't run away as much as other areas because they've been used to it. Areas where you have hunting happening, they do react much more to people on foot. So I think it's very context dependent. I think if people do walking safaris in the wrong way, there's also the dangerous side of it where you can then cause a conflict where you run into dangerous animals, which then can either lead to that animal being shot because it's charging, or it injures a guest or a person. And those are situations you want to avoid. And you can do that if you conduct it in the right way. So that's where, proper education on walking safaris, how to conduct walking safaris is important as well. I don't know if that helps answer your question.
Mhm. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And before I welcome another person, I want to quickly recognize Mweke student that we have with us within the room. And I want to invite people, please use the reaction button to raise your hand. That way we can welcome you. In the meantime, as I'm waiting for people to raise their hand, then I want to welcome William. I think I just lost Willie Olivier. I see you dropped the question in the chat box. Do you mind unmuting your microphone and ask your question?
I'm not sure what question you're referring to.
You had mentioned about if the protected area has a proper management. Oh, yeah.
Plan. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I misspelled there. I'm actually looking. I'm thinking of the Kruger Park in particular because I know a bit about how their management plan looks like, and they also have walking safaris. You zone certain areas as high use areas, and you zone certain areas as very low use areas, and then you keep your walking safaris to the low use areas. Like in South Africa, we talk of wilderness areas as low use areas. And then there's different zonations for other tourism activities.
Yeah, I definitely, even the national park system here in Tanzania they all have management plans. They're basically zoning based. There's high use zones, which is kind of designated for the majority of tourism, low use zones, and then there are wilderness areas as well, which are designated for no tourism, basically for the wildlife. What we actually were given permission about just over 10 years ago to use the wilderness zones in many of the national parks, so Serengeti, Tarangire, for mobile camping and walking safaris, with the stipulations that you couldn't spend more than 3 nights in any one camp. There was no game drives, so no vehicle game drives. Had to be walking safaris apart from driving in and driving out. Basically, your camp had to be able to fit in, no trucks. Your camp had to be able to fit into Land Cruiser or, smaller vehicles. And that worked great. What we're having in Tanzania right now is tourism has definitely become an investment opportunity. So what you're getting is even companies that run, sell electronics around Tanzania, for example, they are now investing in opening up 4, 5, 6 different camps and lodges within the Serengeti, as an example. Basically what's happening, for example, just using the Serengeti, is they're looking across the border at the Masai Mara, which has, I can't remember, it's triple the number of beds in the Masai Mara as the Serengeti National Park, although it's a fraction of the size of the Serengeti. So there, everyone's kind of saying, well, as the management, they're like, well, we should have that. Why can't we have that as well? So there is a lot of pressure right now for sites, for new lodges, for new camps. And of course, everyone wants kind of a special area. So what we're finding is actually the wilderness areas are getting carved slowly and surely out and being given. And so the Serengeti General Management Plan is actually is expired, and they've been working on a new one for the last 2 years. But again, they're having a very hard time because there's a lot of pressure from investors and from companies. So what we're finding is many of the areas that we've been using as for mobile camps and walking safaris are being given away to permanent sites for seasonal camps and permanent camps and lodges, just because there's so much pressure. Again, this is not everywhere. So there are areas in southern Tanzania, there are national parks where there's still a lot of areas. Even in those areas, of course, the best places often for walking safaris also are ideal for, general game drives and normal safaris. So those areas do disappear the fastest. So yeah, that's, again, if there is a proper management plan in place, the problem comes when you have on the ground pressure for investors and sites competing with, those management plans. There's some issues can come up.
Thank you, Josh. We have another question from Malt. I saw your hand up in a few minutes. Do you still want to ask your question?
Thanks a lot. Thanks for the talk. It's been interesting. One of the things with the walking safaris that sometimes maybe is not appreciated is often you have to walk with weapons and rifles, and there's 2 guides and 8 people. And not that it's a common thing, but actually the number of animals that end up needing to be euthanized because of an attack or something like that is, that doesn't happen on a driving safari. So, I actually made a comment a little bit earlier. I love walking in the bush. It's incredible and it's, special, but it's not necessarily for everybody. I think it takes a level of experience in the bush to walk in the bush, even as a client or customer or whatever the right word is. And I think all areas should try to accommodate all, because again, from a cost point of view, I would prefer that more people get exposed to the bush, more people fall in love with the bush and actually see value in the bush than only being kept for very exclusive high-end customers who can afford it. Because the future of any wildlife areas is all the nation feeling benefit from it and feeling the importance of it and the value that it gives you. And it shouldn't be something that's just exclusively for the rich and famous. So, but yeah, I absolutely love myself walking in the bush, and it's a great experience. So don't get me wrong, but I just think can be quite limiting. And then the other point I had made in the chat was the for photographic safaris, very often, I've walked with big cameras and lenses and things, and it's you aren't rewarded in the same way. Certain things, birding and things like that, you can get some good opportunities, but for animal wildlife photography, often in a vehicle is better. They don't run away, as was said from that. So, but yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Marty. If I can jump in here, Like we said earlier, like I think we're on the same page here, where we do also appreciate the opportunities that come with game drives and being in certain lodges that are in nice areas that are also affordable. We're not focusing on high-end clients only, but yes, walking safaris are not necessarily inclusive. They're not for everyone, like you said. Um, and the one thing I'd like to bring back from one of the questions that we asked is that when we walk, it does humble a person because of the environment that you find yourself in, and that humility that is triggered from a walking as opposed to when we're in a game drive. I find personally that it does trigger more questions in someone's mind, and then they're like, okay, but what if I do this, and what if this happens? And I think this is the something that's the opportunity that leads to sustainable agency from people, from clients. It can happen on safaris in general, in game drives. People can become serious, but the immersion that we have in walking safaris, I'm sure you experience this as yourself as well. We're more cautious. We're more, we want to know what we need to do and what we should not do, and that education, I think does increase the agency that sustainability, this big term,
Yeah.
requires. Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know
I
if
mean,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, the 100% I agree with you. I mean, you become closer to nature, more one with nature. You start appreciating how tiring it is to walk this distance, seeing how far the animals run, how fast they run, and the sun is beating down on you, and they're standing there all day. So you become an animal within their space. So from those aspects, it is incredible. As I say, I absolutely love walking in the bush. But even within, I mean, I've done that a lot in Kruger and whatever, and the costs associated with it, it is more affordable to be able to drive in your vehicle. But the one thing that is also a differentiator with walking is experiencing small things, looking at a spider, seeing a mapani worm on a leaf, eating. When you're driving in the car, you don't even notice those things, and hearing things. Even the crunching of the the mapani worm eating a mapani leaf. Now you can see that in the camp, but you can't get out and touch. And not to say that you're gonna damage things while you're doing it, but you can actually. It's at a level where you can touch it and feel it, and it's good for a human being. But yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Marty. And let me welcome Lorraine Rich. I see your hand up. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Ollie, Joshua, lovely hearing your conversation. And I agree with you, walking in the bush is just fabulous. And walking with somebody that can explain and interpret what you're seeing and the sights and the sounds, it is fabulous. But my question for you is, how do you actually measure your sustainability impact? It's a word that I think that Ollie said, it's a big word and it gets bandied around a lot. And, companies say that we have sustainable solutions, but, oh, I've got very bad feedback. The question is, how do you actually measure it? How are you measuring it? Because I think this is going to become a defining factor for businesses. When they've got to justify when they say that we are a sustainable business. That's my question. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Lorraine. It's a very, very good question. $1 million question, some would say. It's to be very honest with you, we don't necessarily right now have a metric. And this is again, yeah, I think, why we tried in the beginning, just to be very open. That's, yeah, just the word sustainable has many uses, many misuses, and is bandied about in especially tourism a lot. Again, for us, sustainable it incorporates much more than just ecological, looking at, sustaining environments, ecosystems. It looks at how, like Oli touched on, within your company, how are you treating employees? It goes from payment to working environment to, a lot of respect for employees, for communities that you work with. So we don't have any metrics, to be honest with you. We do partner with Carbon Tanzania in Tanzania, who run, basically they do RED projects, so reducing emissions through deforestation and degradation. Basically, they work with communities who are protecting environments that then sequester and keep carbon. So, looking at it from basically an carbon footprint, they actually can come in and do an assessment of your carbon footprint and actually look at how you can help and work on that. And for us, it's been more of kind of a gut feeling as end conversations like we're having now, to try and think of the blind spots, when we're running safaris. Where are we having an impact, a negative impact in any way, whether it's ecological, culturally, our clients are having negative impact. Tourism in general is not, people are flying around the world. So, there's arguments that just tourism itself is not a sustainable industry in general, if people are flying halfway around the world constantly to do it. So, yeah, it's a very good question. And, again, I think these are kind of the things where it'd be great to have, ideas of how other people are doing it, to be honest with you, and how we should go forward with it. I don't know.
If I can add, I think the metrics eventually could help finding an adequate way to measure it. And right now, I think, Josh, what we do rather is to have guidelines. So we're looking for the most relevant, maybe more up-to-date guidelines through the partnerships that we have with. So Josh mentioned Carbon Tanzania. There's Udiama Community Resource Trust that operates in protection of areas with local communities, protection of the rights, education of the rights of the land. And so, or PAMS is another NGO that we collaborate with, and the constant conversation that we have with them through those partnerships help us find better ways. Now, again, what are the better ways? But I think that's our answer right now, like through finding guidelines through partnerships. But then if there are tools that exist that are applicable here in what we do, that it could definitely add to our reflections.
Thank you so much, Josh and Oli, for addressing that. We also have another question from Alta Gaya. If you're with us, can you ask your question? If not, I'm going to read your question. They're from Malawi in Kontakota district, and mentioned that called Mawia. It is a natural hot spring with beautiful and unique scenery, but the surrounding communities do not seem to value or care for it. How can people be encouraged to restore and protect this area? What would you advise? People who have the zeal and praise like that, they want to start restoring for ecotourism purposes.
Yeah, it's a very, I think, tricky one. So, how do you get surrounding communities to buy into areas, I guess, protecting areas? And unfortunately, again, we're involved with lots of things. And last week, where I was at a meeting regarding a marine protected area that we're helping to basically run off the coast of Tanzania. And unfortunately, you talk to village leaders, you talk to government officials, you talk to the Marine, Marine Protection and Reserves Unit. Unfortunately, a lot of it revolves around economics. Kind of we're in a place with enough people that nature kind of has to pay its way. So, this is again one of the ways where we found tourism as a tool can actually help to bring in revenue into communities that have areas where tourism is viable. As a way, and again for us, it's always been alongside traditional livelihood. So tourism should help to should be an extra while always maintaining traditional livelihoods of the people that living in the area. So it's something that boosts and helps to protect the way people have been doing things and protecting those areas traditionally. So, again, unfortunately, often you have to look at the economics of it. Is there a way that, surrounding communities can benefit from ecotourism and those areas? And unfortunately, from, just my experiences talking with, with those areas that we have lost because of many different things, talking to the people that lived in those areas, a lot of people see the value only after it's lost. Once they're older and they're looking back and, it's fields and they're like, oh, as a kid, I used to, have my cattle in these areas, and I actually used to go and spear buffalo, and there was lions on every rock, and it's only once it's gone. So it's how to instill, sometimes looking at traditional, really traditional knowledge, passing on traditional knowledge from elders to youngsters is a way sometimes to get the community interested again in those areas if there is something important about it within cultures. So yeah, those are some of the ways, but it's a difficult one, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Joshua, for sharing some of the ideas, and I'm hoping, Brea, you picked some that could possibly fit for your place, for your district. Yes, let me welcome Johan. I see your hand up.
Thanks, Diane. Ollie and Joshua, I am part of the team of the Leadership for Conservation in Africa, the LCA. And essentially, as you may know, but the rest of the audience may not know, we're basically a network of conservation-minded people across the whole continent that work together. We have a small team based also scattered all over Africa. And once a year, we meet somewhere in Africa. And we always choose this location and the organization that hosts us with much care, because it's a statement of support for a local organization, and we don't always get to do that. In 2024, we were hosted by Dorobo in Tanzania, and it was an incredible experience. The way that you respected the local community and made them part of the experience was something special. It was an incredibly authentic experience, and it was also obvious that you use conservation or ecotourism as a tool to conserve really vulnerable environments. So our sincere respect for your work. We really appreciate it. And most of all, if any of you have a chance to visit this location, you will receive the most incredible dining experience. I don't know how you do it. In the middle of the bush, you get like 5-star food. It just blows your mind. So if anybody considers visiting Tanzania, you shouldn't even think twice about it. The sad news tonight is that Rodolfo has tried his very, very best to join us from Mozambique. So unfortunately, the technology is not working with him. We will absolutely invite him back to another evening. Rodolfo is one of those African storytellers that just opens nature for you as if it's your favorite book. And I've recently experienced him on a visit to Mozambique, and I can just, if you're in the region of southern Mozambique, Ponta Mbene, don't miss it. do visit Rodolfo. You will not be sorry. But for now, for tonight, that is it. Please join us again on the 4th of December for the last Unlocking Nature of this year, when we will be joined by Joep Stevens, amateur historian and ex-head of tourism in the Kruger National Park, and he will do an overview of flooding events in the Kruger National Park. It promises to be a fascinating evening of science and storytelling. So we look forward to having you with us again soon. Deanne, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Johan. And allow me to again quickly appreciate, join me as we use the reaction of clap to applause for Oli and Joshua for a fantastic evening. We really learned a lot from Dorobo and from my personal experience, but I believe also people who are joining us had a really informative session, learning more about mobile camping and safari walking. I think you took us on the journey of how it is in Tanzania. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your experience. We really appreciate. I don't know if you have concluding remarks for us as we close. Odi or Josh, you can close for us, and then we call it a night.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
I
you.
think. Go for it, Oli. Go for it, Oli.
Thanks for joining tonight and for listening, and mostly for being curious. We really appreciate that curiosity, because we believe that's what's going to lead to better practices over time. So thanks for the questions, for the suggestions, the reflections, and let's keep doing that together.
Yep, and I'll just add by saying, thanks again, for also great questions. We love to, these are the things we love to talk about, not just to talk about them, but to think of solutions and answers. And there's some very good questions that we were not able to get to, but just so you know, this is what we like: discussions, questions, and thank you to Share Screen Africa and all for hosting this.
Thank you so much, everyone. This is our end. Thank you so much. Have a great night.